to a special Halloween edition of Center Stage Sweets. Since Halloween is tomorrow, we are celebrating in the perfect musical theater fashion by honoring the musical Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street by Stephen Sondheim and Hugh Wheeler. So for those of you that don't know what the show is about, it tells the story of Sweeney Todd, a man who was wrongfully accused of a crime and has now returned to London to exact his revenge. And his way of doing so is by killing his patrons, and his neighbor downstairs, Mrs. Lovett, who owns a meat pie shop, takes the meat off of his victims and turns them into pies, and they sell them, and it's, yeah, cannibalism. It's fun. So we are going to honor that today, not with a meat pie, but with a dessert pie. So we're going to be making our Death by Chocolate pie today. And the great part about this, it's a no bake. It's a freezer pie, so it's gonna be super simple, absolutely delicious, full of chocolate, and incredibly indulgent. So let's get started. To get started on our pie, we're gonna make our crust first. Now, I've already processed about 24 Oreo sandwich cookies through my food processor. Leave the filling inside, but you wanna make sure you're only using the original, not the double stuffed, and you can leave the cream in if you're using the originals. And then I've melted about 6 tablespoons of unsalted butter, and we're gonna mix those two together. If you find that your crust is not coming together and it's not quite combining and it's not quite tough enough, you can add in another tablespoon or 2 of butter if needed. So we're just gonna mix these two together until it's kind of like a wet sand consistency. I'm so excited to be making a Sweeney Todd inspired dessert. It is one of my favorite shows. I actually wrote the papers that got me into grad school based on this show and its history. It's been a huge study point for me. And then a few years ago, I actually got the chance to play the role of the beggar woman when Schenectady Light Opera did it. It was a dream role for me. I hope I could play her again a million times. It was an absolute blast. Our crust mixture is all set, so we're gonna grab our pie plate. I have my pie plate here. I have actually sprayed it with cooking spray. Even though it's not going in the oven, this is still gonna help make sure that the pie releases a little bit easier. Anybody who ever has made pie knows that the first slice, it's always so hard to get out. So this is gonna help make sure that the crust comes off evenly. So we're gonna pour our crust mixture right into our pie plate. Make sure you get it all out of there. And then to spread it around, you can either do it by hand, or I like to, just so I don't get it like in my fingernails and all that, I like to use a small measuring cup and just use it to kind of press the crust around the pie plate. And just move it around until you get a nice flat bottom and the crust goes up the sides. And that's your crust. It goes into the freezer for about 30 minutes, and while it's in the freezer, we'll start working on the filling. To start our filling, I have 16 ounces of 60% dark cocoa in here. We're gonna put this on a double boiler and let it melt down while we make the rest of our filling. In my mixing bowl, I have 8 ounces of room temperature cream cheese, and we're gonna start by just whipping it up, just kind of breaking it up and getting some air incorporated into it. Now that we've got the cream cheese nice and whipped up, there's a lot of air incorporated, we're gonna add in 2 cups of whipping cream. So when you get it at the store, if you get these kind of smaller containers, this is just about 2 cups, so you don't need to worry about measuring it, you can just pour it right in. We're gonna slowly incorporate it, and we're just gonna whip it for a little bit. Again, getting some air into it, getting some body. Always start lower when you've got the whipping cream going at first, just because it's gonna splash at you if you don't. And then just slowly increase it as it gets thicker and thicker. Our mixture is starting to thicken a little bit, so at this point we wanna make a few additions. We have 2 tablespoons of confectioner's sugar, we have 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, and we have half a teaspoon of kosher salt. And now we're just gonna keep whipping, and this is gonna thicken up nicely as we do. The mixture is getting really thick. It's not quite all the way whipped up yet, but now is when we're going to add in a 1/2 cup of granulated sugar. So pour that right in, and now we're gonna keep whipping until it's got a nice thick texture where you can actually see the lines of the beaters in it. That's how you'll know that it's thick enough. And now you can mix it on high. Our mixture is nice and thick. If you were to look down in the bowl right now, you'd be able to see all the lines from our beaters. That is when it is ready for the addition of our chocolate. And I believe our chocolate is done. Oh yeah. So carefully remove it from your double boiler. Now, you don't want to put this hot chocolate directly into your mixture. That cream cheese will curdle. You'll end up with little like dots of cream cheese throughout the mixture and it won't be homogeneous. So instead of doing that, and since we don't want to wait for this to cool and take forever, what we're going to do is we're actually going to take a small amount of this mixture, maybe like a tablespoon or so, and we're gonna put it in the hot chocolate. It's kind of the same way that you temper eggs when you are putting hot chocolate into something that, or any kind of hot mixture into something with eggs in it to keep the eggs from scrambling. We're gonna do the same thing here to keep that cream cheese from curdling. So we're gonna plop this in and just give it a quick mix around. And this is just gonna help cool down the chocolate so that it doesn't curdle that cream cheese on us. And you just want to keep mixing it until what you added is combined. It's actually going to really thicken up your chocolate, which is good. So we're almost there. All right, it's nice and combined. See how thick the chocolate is now? Now you know it's cooled enough that it can go into your mixture. All right. So we're gonna incorporate this chocolate. Really scrape down the side of that bowl, get all of the chocolate out that you can, because this is death by chocolate after all. No chocolate should get left behind anywhere. Okay, and before we mix that in, we're also going to add a little secret ingredient. I have here 2 tablespoons of brewed coffee. Now, it's not gonna give this mixture a coffee flavor. What this coffee is gonna do, it's actually gonna enhance that chocolatey flavor of the rest of it. I am not a coffee drinker. I don't like the taste of it, but I am telling you, it does not make the dessert taste like coffee. It actually makes it taste more chocolatey. So just, save a couple tablespoons from your morning coffee if you're a coffee drinker, or do what I did and brew up a tiny little batch just for this. And we're gonna mix that all together. Our chocolate is all mixed in. I'm gonna give the sides of the bowl a quick scrape down before we add in our final ingredient to the filling. So our final ingredient, we're actually gonna add in some chopped up bark thins that are dark chocolate with pretzel. Now here's the part where you can have a little bit of fun. When I originally was coming up with this recipe, I was looking for dark chocolate covered cashews because they're my favorite little chocolatey dessert, but I couldn't find any that I really liked and that worked well. So I was just going through the grocery store and found these bark thins, and they were perfect. You could also substitute in any dark milk chocolate covered pretzels or any other kind of nut that you might like. This is the part that's totally up to you. So if you're using the bark thins, I got 3 bags, and each bag is about 4.7 ounces. So I have 3 of them that I've chopped up to kind of little crumbly sizes, and we're gonna put most of it in. We're gonna save a little bit to use on top as decoration, but most of that is gonna go in right now, and then we're just gonna give it another quick mix to make sure that it's spread throughout. You can also do this part by hand too if you don't want to use your mixer. All right, it's all mixed in. Now it's time to fill up our crust. Our pie crust has been chilling for a half an hour, so now we're just gonna pour in our filling. Oh, that looks so good. All right, and then we're just gonna kind of gently smooth it around to make sure that it's evenly dispersed. You want everybody to get a nice big chocolatey bite with each slice. All right, and from here, we're gonna top it. So we're gonna do two things to top it, and the topping is totally optional. You can do whatever you want with it, but what I like to do is take some of the bark thins that we have left and kind of just sprinkle them on top, just to kind of show like it's kind of an homage to what's inside of it, so people aren't totally surprised when they look at this, think it's a mousse, and then they get that crunchy bite. They can see that, oh, there is gonna be something crunchy happening here. Oh, nice and sprinkled. And I even like to use the little dusty bits. They just add a nice color contrast across the board. All right. And now I'm gonna melt some chocolate chips, some dark chocolate chips in the microwave, and we're just gonna drizzle the melted chocolate chips on top of it for a final touch. All right, I melted a bunch of chocolate chips in the microwave in about like 10 to 20-second intervals at a time, so it's a little hot to deal with, but we're just gonna drizzle it. And it doesn't have to be any particular shape or design. It's just added extra chocolate because why not? This is all about indulgence here. All right. Now this is gonna go back in the freezer for about 2 hours. It can stay overnight. After 2 hours though, I would probably cover it with some cling wrap, but I would leave it until then so that it doesn't get stuck and your beautiful presentation doesn't get ruined. We learned that the hard way in testing. So into the freezer for 2 hours and we'll see you then. Our Death by Chocolate pie has been in the freezer for about 2 hours now, which means it is ready to be dished up. Before you slice into it though, I would probably let it sit out for maybe about 5 to 10 minutes just to let it loosen a little bit. Otherwise, you might break your knife trying to go into it. We really hope you enjoyed this recipe today. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Center Stage Sweets. And we're now on Patreon, so if you want to help support us and keep these recipes and videos coming, please join us today as a Patreon supporter. And for more tips and recipes, be sure to visit us at centerstagesweets.com. See you next time.